A number of European nations, including France, Poland, and Czechoslovakia, held their own trials after World War II of Germans and local collaborators for war crimes. The Soviets held one of the first trials in July 1943 for crimes committed by Germans in Krasnodar, located in the northern Caucasus region of the USSR. 8 of the 11 prosecuted were found guilty and executed. A second trial in December 1943 for crimes against the civilian population and POWs in Kharkov in Ukraine raised the issue of the use of gas to murder civilian populations for the first time. Most of the civilians killed at Kharkov were Jews. 3 German Gestapo members caught by the Soviets were found guilty and executed. Some historians and legal scholars considered this trial the first trial of the Holocaust. In December 1946, American prosecutors went after 23 German doctors for crimes against humanity and war crimes. The trial, Doctors' Trial, focused on the willing participation of German doctors in medical experiments in concentration camps on Jews, Gypsies, Poles, and Russians. Many of the victims who survived were scarred or crippled as a result of these medical experiments. The military court found 16 guilty and ordered the execution of 7 in August 1947, and the executions were carried out in June 1948. This trial's importance derived from its emphasis on the role of physicians in carrying out tortured medical experiments and cooperation in victimizing and murdering civilians based on Nazi racial theories. The Einsatzgruppen trial from September 27, 1947 to April 9, 1948, tried 24 members of the SS for mass murder behind German lines in the Soviet Union. Defendants were tried in Nuremberg on charges of crimes against humanity and war crimes for killing Jews, Gypsies, Soviet officials, and non-Jewish Soviet civilians from 1941 to 1943. This was a trial that was important because of its focus on the genocide of Jews and documented the actions of the special duty troops, all of whom were found guilty. One of the other major trials held after the war took place in Krakow, Poland, from November 1924 to December 22, 1947. The trial, known as the First Auschwitz Trial, prosecuted 24 Germans associated with the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration and death camps. Allied officials in Germany under previous agreements extradited the Germans for crimes committed in Poland to Polish authorities. Earlier, the first commandant of Auschwitz was tried and sentenced to death. As a result of the Auschwitz trial, 23 were found guilty and sentenced to death. These were among the major post-war trials held in Germany, or the countries occupied by the Germans, for crimes against humanity and war crimes that held some of those responsible for the Holocaust and murder of Gypsies and civilians in Poland, USSR, France, and other German-occupied countries. By 1950, because of the Cold War, the trials of those responsible for mass murder during World War II ended. Those who participated in the Holocaust or other atrocities in Nazi-occupied Europe could quietly live out their lives, once again find jobs in the German government, or if they feared eventual justice, escape to Latin America, especially Brazil, Argentina, or Chile, blending into the German communities in those nations. No one really cared about the Holocaust in the 1950s. The few films that were produced about concentration camps, like the French Night and Fog, were censored by the French and German governments. In the United States, no films were produced, and only one episode of the TV series Twilight Zone reminded audiences of the Holocaust. One major historian, Raoul Hilberg, worked on the legacy of the Holocaust, but little was mentioned in classes or historical works. Few courses in high schools or colleges in the United States or Europe mention the Holocaust, except in passing. This began to change in 1961 because of a trial held in Israel. Lieutenant Colonel Adolf Eichmann played a major role in organizing the transportation of Jews to the concentration and death camps, especially the elimination of most of Hungary's Jews in 1944. Eichmann took special pride in the determination he showed in pressuring the Hungarian government to comply with the German desire to round up, transport, and eliminate Hungary's Jews with all deliberate speed. After the war, he fled to Argentina, where in 1960 Israeli agents found him and secretly transported him to Israel to stand trial for crimes against humanity, war crimes, and crimes against the Jewish people. His was the first televised trial, and Israel's Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion saw the trial as an opportunity to educate a new generation in Israel and abroad on the Holocaust and the need of a Jewish state to protect Jews. One of the journalists who covered the trial, a German Jewish refugee, Hannah Arendt, developed the phrase banality of evil that she used in her book about the trial, Eichmann in Jerusalem, because of his apparent ordinary background, that a person with a commonplace background could become an architect of mass murder. After a 16-week trial, the Israeli court found Eichmann guilty, sentenced him to death in 1961, and he was executed on June 1, 1962 by hanging. Witnesses provided details of the Holocaust for the audience in Israel and abroad, which reawakened interest in what happened to the Jews of Europe. The case against Eichmann also reviewed the mass murder of gypsies and the deportation and killings of non-Jewish civilians in Poland, Yugoslavia, and Czechoslovakia. Eichmann's trial highlighted the atrocities committed by the Germans during World War II. The trial and its outcome produced an emotional response for Jews in Israel and abroad. It became a source of pride for the Israeli state that they had brought one of the leading Nazi officials to trial for crimes against the Jewish people. The Eichmann trial led to a renewed interest in the Holocaust and led Germany to begin prosecutions of Nazi officials who were still alive. This culminated in the second Auschwitz trial in Frankfurt, Germany, from December 10, 1963 to August 10, 1965. Until the Eichmann trial, Germany had done little to prosecute surviving Nazis, but the trial acted as a catalyst for Germany to assume responsibility to seek justice for those murdered in the name of the Nazi Party and the German state. 22 SS officials and former guards at Auschwitz were brought to trial. The German court heard 360 witnesses, including 211 survivors. The trial lasted 18 months and led to convictions of most of the defendants. Federal Supreme Court upheld the convictions, with several defendants getting life sentences. Many Germans consider the trial and convictions one of the most important events in the judicial history of Germany since the end of World War II. Because the trial focused on the mass murders committed during the Nazi era, it educated another generation of Germans on the events of the war and the Holocaust. However, what limited further action was the German Statute of Limitations. In 1979, in response to growing concern that the last of the Nazis would escape punishment, the German government removed the legal limitations in cases involving Nazi crime. Germany started including Holocaust in school curriculum, and even made denial of the Holocaust a crime. Political movements openly espousing neo-Nazi ideology and anti-Semitism are banned in Germany, a legacy of the Holocaust and the Eichmann trial.